Hi, I'm Sam Payne, and welcome to a BYU Radio Family Christmas, a tradition around here that gets all the BYU Radio hosts around the microphones together once a year to share a little Christmas with each other and with you. And we look forward to it all year, and we think you'll enjoy this hour. Christmas is a time of goodwill toward men, and this year we've been thinking about acts of kindness and service, things done by other folks that have made our worlds just a little brighter. And we've been urged toward these thoughts by the Light the World campaign, focusing on encouraging acts of service at Christmas time. This year's Light the World theme is Be Someone's Angel. And you can find out more about that campaign at lighttheworld.org. Now, let's meet the gang, shall we? I'm joined here by Lisa Valentine-Clark, host of The Lisa Show. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Steve Perry, host of In Good Faith.
Glad to be here.
Marcus Smith, host of Constant Wonder. Thanks for joining us, Marcus.
Great to be here.
And Julie Rose, the host of not only Top of Mind, but also the Uncomfy podcast. Julie, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
We have all kind of individually thought of times in our lives when people have done something kind for us in a way that makes a difference. But the very first story that came to my mind was a story from when I was in third grade. My third grade teacher was Miss Phillips, and I was lousy at math. And it was just so hard for me. And Miss Phillips pulled me aside individually to give me some help with math, kind of just before lunch, in kind of the 10 minutes or so before lunch. And I needed a lot more help than 10 minutes. And so she kept me in during lunch. She would later make sure that I had lunch, right? Mm-hmm. But she kept me for a while because she wanted to just kind of get me over this hump of whatever math concept we were learning. And she took me away from the other students to a table in the library. And what that meant, unfortunately, was that I was sitting at the library working on math. All of the students in my elementary school, especially the grades that were older than me, were all going to lunch. And they were all walking by me in the library as I was sitting there, head down, frustrated over these math problems with Miss Phillips helping me. And I began to cry. So there I am, crying in the media center over the math problems, students streaming out of class and walking by me, and I know that they're all pointing and laughing at the third grade kid who doesn't know how to do long division. And Miss Phillips patiently, kindly, with her beautiful soft voice, sat there next to me and walked me through those math problems. Now, at the time, I did not in any way look on it as an act of service, right?
No, you didn't.
I had been dragged kicking and screaming to those circumstances, and I actually even felt like it was my teacher being mean to me, you know. But I've had a lot of years to look back on teachers. And frankly, I know what it is for a teacher to give up their lunchtime.
Yeah,
right?
A lot of time.
But also, as I look back on that now, I see the love and care for the one as she helped me over that hump. And then, as I said, saw that I got some lunch too. And that's a memory that comes back unbidden from time to time as an example of somebody helping someone who, frankly, is hard to help. How about you, Lisa?
I was thinking of a time when I felt very anxious in a way that I couldn't really communicate. It was approaching Christmas time. I have 5 kids at home and a husband who's been recently diagnosed with a terminal disease. It was a crazy time, but for all intents and purposes, looked still kind of normal and acted kind of normal. And now I'm supposed to just go about my life normally. I was horribly depressed and pretending like I wasn't an angel, which I feel like it's more even significant that I still to this day don't know who it is. An anonymous person left a gift on our front door. People had known about the diagnosis. Everyone was just sort of waiting for our reaction to it. So we open this gift, and it's this huge, large pillow It was really weird. And I was like, what is this? And it had all these little tiny pockets. And I thought, oh, it's an Advent pillow. I was kind of confused.
An Advent pillow.
In each one of the slots, the little pockets, was a gift card for a different activity.
Yeah.
Some for food, some to go get a treat, some for activities, something to do, like Barnes & Noble, like to go buy a book. And what I had realized then is that this was a map for me to get through the holidays, something that I didn't think that I needed, but that I desperately did. And what happened next was so, in my mind, miraculous, because the kids were like, what is that? And as I explained, they got so excited. And it was a permission for, mostly they were teenagers at the time. And, it's hard to get teenagers on board for anything. Let's go look at the lights. Okay, whatever, Mom. But the novelty of it, the timing of it, because I'm sure they could sense a lot of the, what are we doing tonight? I don't know. What are we even having for dinner? Let alone, how can we make the holidays special? And it was a reminder that in my mind, I had thought, oh, I'm alone in this. I have to carry this by myself. Nobody understands what this is like. But that somebody who is anonymous would send this, an angel in my mind, because this is not even something that I'd ever uttered. Nothing that I could have even expressed. And I hadn't yet to, even my closest friends, had answered a need that I had that said, and it gave me hope moving forward because I thought, you didn't even know to ask for this. This plea was answered in a creative way. So this could be a possibility in the future as well.
Yeah.
You may feel like you don't know how you're going to get through this, but that's just because somebody else is going to come up with the idea. You just haven't thought of it yet. And it really gave me a lot of hope. And it also gave me that, I remember that Christmas just walking through life, just assuming it could have been anyone. And when you walk through life assuming that your friends, strangers, neighbors you don't know is doing something really nice for you, it's a really great way to walk through the holidays. And so,
Lisa, there's something about your story that really impacts me, and that is when you began telling that story, you talked about a time when really what you had was the news, right?
Yeah.
You had the diagnosis, but outside of the diagnosis, things looked pretty much as they had, right?
Yeah.
I mean, your husband was still physically able to do many of the things that he had always been able to do. It looked pretty much normal, right? But the news had thrown everything into disarray,
everything
right?
settled in my bones.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder how many people with whom I interact that look completely normal have just received news.
I think about that all the time.
Or who for one reason or another are not the way they look,
Yeah.
And really do have important needs that might be simple to meet. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Steve, how about you?
It's kind of a tale of two meetings. So I was in Boston. I was visiting my son who lives there. And since I was there, for In Good Faith, my podcast, I wanted to go and talk to actual Quakers who live in community, folks I just don't find in my neighborhood in Provo. And so I had several of these interviews, but I also like to check out places of worship. And so I was by the Boston Common. I stop in at St. Paul's Cathedral, beautiful Episcopal church. I walk in. The guy at the office is wearing a clerical collar. I said, "Hi, I'm Steve." He says, "Hi, I'm Bob. Call me Deacon Bob." And we chat. And I was about to leave, and you get those little taps on your shoulder. I turned around and said, "I would love to hear the story of your faith journey, if you have time." And he said, "I do this afternoon." So I show up, and he gives a lovely interview. We communicate a bit through Facebook. I watch what he does. Occasionally, he'll click like on something my family does. So a year ago, I got a late night call from my son in his late 20s saying, we knew he'd been sick and just wasn't getting better. And he said, I come to the emergency ward because I couldn't really breathe. And I'm thinking all the dad things. I hope you didn't drive yourself. He did. And he said, so I'm here at the emergency ward, and he's saying this through coughing and pausing to take deep breaths. He said, they're going to put me out because they have to check my lungs and see what's going on. So while I'm unconscious, I just signed a thing that's saying, you are making all my medical decisions for the next, 20 minutes, 25 minutes. I said, okay, thanks for letting me know. And then I hear nothing for an hour. And I try calling him. There's no answer. And then just before midnight, I get a call saying, hi, Mr. Perry. Yes, I'm Dr. So-and-so. Anyway, he explains that they were not going to wake up my son because once they had intubated him, they saw his lungs were actually hemorrhaging.
Oh, wow.
And they have no idea what this is. He said, we've got a team of people working on what's causing this, but we can't wake him up. If you can come, you should come now, which is not the call you want to get.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I immediately, we start saying, okay, what do we need to prep? Because obviously we're going. So I posted an interest in your prayers for Ben. Usually you don't make these things real public. And so I posted that. And Deacon Bob says, Stephen, are you in Boston? I'm so sorry to read your news about Benjamin. I realize he is sedated now, but I would visit him and offer prayers with him if you are not able to be with him in person. Certainly keeping you all in prayer now. I said, if you have time, that would be lovely for you to stop by and please pray with him, even though he's sedated. He says, I'll be there first thing in the morning. And I said, but even if you can't visit, I believe in the efficacy of your prayer from wherever you are. And he says, indeed, there is no distance in prayer. And then our conversations continue. He was there. I said, if you don't mind, please hold his hand. Please pray out loud. Please tell him you're my friend. Do whatever feels like the right thing to do. And so that's what he did. And he didn't even really know me. I mean, we had sat down to have an interview. He just did all the things to be there when he knew we wanted to be and couldn't, and to pray. And then, I mean, I have a whole list of angels from this event, which are his friends who showed up and sat with him, his fellow yoga teachers, members of the choir he directs. I was thinking, how many people are in that room? And so when we got there, Deacon Bob came back later in the evening. He just wanted to check up, then to see how we were. And it just meant so much to me that somebody would show up to sort of be the surrogate person, and that I didn't know if he was conscious enough to hear what was being said, but I wanted him to hear reassurance and that we were on our way. All those things he did for us. 10 days later, they figured out finally what it was. He had 8 people working, 4 different treatments happening at once. One of them turned out to have been the right one. Wow. A thing called leptospirosis that you mostly only get in the tropics. And later I found out only about 1 in 5 people live. Wow. And usually if they're like my son, it's because they're young. I like to think prayers help too.
Of course, Steve, we remember that very clearly. Your BYU Radio family, kind of walked through that in our own way with you, and our prayers were with you. And I think all of us thought, oh, good heavens, there's almost nothing I can do because it's far away, it's and somebody was there to catch, and what a remarkable story. And of course, we're thrilled that Ben's doing so well.
Indeed.
Yeah. Oh. Marcus, how about you?
I met Jerry when I was 13. Moved in. He was a military man, worked for the Air Force, had a couple of kids, a wonderful wife. The kids were ages 2 and 4. And he did throw himself into a volunteer position to do something grand that he probably to this day doesn't know was as useful, at least to me, as it was. Boy Scouts in those days sometimes would go camping if anybody dared go with them and oversee them and sign the release forms and all of that. Yeah. But he wasn't a scout leader at all. He was just retained to be our guide. This is epic, by the way, on a trek through the Grand Canyon for a week-long trek.
Oh, wow.
So I'm about 13 years old. Well, here's what Jerry brought with him. He had studied geology in college. He knew everything about the Grand Canyon. It's not just the rocks, but the plants and the animals and all of the ecosystem relationships, the dynamism of all of that. He knew how to use gear for backpacking. He was just, he's the kind of guy he always had a sharp pocket knife, And
That guy.
That's who he was. Well, he was optimistic and enthusiastic and informed and helpful. He always liked to just do things for people. So he did volunteer to come with us, and throughout that week, I remember him reassuring me when I thought I was going to die. He would check the straps on my backpack and all of the pins and the gears, and if it had bells and whistles, he would fix those too. Kept me away from rattlesnakes and scorpions, that sort of thing. But of all the things that Jerry offered me as a volunteer, helping us scouts get through the Grand Canyon on that trip, not just through, but down into it, through it, and then back up out of it. This is what he gave me. He left a legacy of reverence for creation, because as he spoke about what he knew, he had an air about him that I knew of his interest, his passion, but also there was something in it where he was saying to me, Marcus, this really matters. You have to think back. Here's the backstory. I was a little kid from suburban San Diego who never really got out into nature. This is the first big event of my life that I could be found in what you can legitimately call a wilderness. And it's overwhelming. It can fill you with wonder. It can disorient you. But he connected for me the sacred aspect of the beauty of the world. And Jerry's the guy who got me out into that beautiful world as somebody who loves to hike and garden and fish and bird and wonder.
And that has formed the foundation for a lot of what you do now.
It has indeed, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in your life, but even what you do professionally.
With the podcast, that's
right.
right.
The podcast. Yeah, wow. Well, thanks, Jerry. On behalf of
no
everybody
kidding.
who finds themselves enriched by the work you do now. Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks for being with us for a BYU Radio Family Christmas. That was Marcus Smith, host of the Constant Wonder podcast. There's a lot more Christmas storytelling coming up. I'm Sam Payne. It's great to have you with us, and I want to introduce you to another show from the BYU Radio family of podcasts. The show is called In Good Faith, and in this podcast, Stephen Cat Perry, the host, in each episode talks with a different person about that person's faith tradition. These guests talk about their relationship with the divine that will strengthen your faith, and Steve is a great listener. It's a podcast that helps you celebrate the power of faith and belief, a podcast on which you hear stories and accounts from believers of all kinds, told in their own words. You can listen to In Good Faith wherever you hear our show. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all kinds of places to listen to In Good Faith on demand. It's great to have you with us for a gathering around the microphones of some of the members of the BYU Radio family, the hosts of our shows. How about a story from Julie Rose, host of podcasts like Top of Mind and Uncomfy? Julie?
Okay, well, I probably should have gone earlier because all of this was very transcendent and
We need a break.
Here's my story. There's a couple of things that you need to know. First of all, I live alone and I don't like to ask for help. And I generally, I prefer to serve rather than be served. And for some strange, not at all healthy reason, when people do service for me, I feel a little guilty, like they're doing something that I could have done for myself, and I don't really need this. I don't know where that comes from, but I'll have to bring it up with my therapist.
Yeah, we can unpack that later.
Okay. So a couple of years ago, I moved into a new neighborhood, and I immediately set about rehabbing the yard. It's very clear as everyone kind of walks by on their evening walks, and we're chatting, and they're like, oh, here's a capable lady who's moved into this house. So the first time it snowed heavily in that home, I was caught off guard. We hadn't expected such a large snowfall. And I hadn't yet had to shovel my drive at this point. I woke up that morning, looked out the window, and oh, good heavens, there's so much snow. It's several inches. I got to get out there and shovel my driveway because I can't drive over it because then it's going to melt and it's going to turn to ice and it's going to just be this big mess. And I must keep up with the neighbors, right? So I'm in a hurry because I hadn't planned on this. So I change into my work clothes and I'm like stumbling out the front door, fishing around for my shovel in the shed. And I come around the corner to my driveway and there's nothing on it. And I thought in that moment, it must be because of the warmth of the house that like the drive didn't accumulate anything. That's kind of magical. Like how wonderful that is. I guess it didn't snow as much as I thought it had. Like, all right. So I go back in, get ready for the day, head off to work. I'm like, that's a really strange thing. Like I bought a magical house with a magical driveway. A magical driveway
that's your first
that doesn't
thought.
need to be literal. And that says so much, right? About, I'm capable. No one would think to shovel my drive. Like why? The fact that it didn't even occur to me that I might have had some like snow angel that was shoveling my drive says an awful lot about my mindset, right? The next time it snows heavily, again, same story. I'm like, oh man, it snowed really heavily. I got to get out there and shovel my walk. And this time I'm like, no, well, hang on a second. Like, it looks like it's been shoveled a little bit. Now that I look a little more closely, I can see that snow's been kind of thrown up. And I'm like, well, and I was kind of mad initially. I was like, what? Well, who would do that? Like, I had this. Like, I planned on this. I woke up early. Like, this was going to be my exercise for the day. What is happening here? This continued. I have been at this home for several years now. So then it became, I was like, I got to catch this person. Who is this? And I need to tell them, thank you so much for doing this. I got this. You can go serve somebody else. I could not catch them. I, to this day, have not caught my snow shoveling angel. No matter how early I get up, no matter how much I try to anticipate, inevitably I come out, cold and dark neighborhood, and they've beat me to my driveway. And I don't know who it is. I now suspect there might be like a team of snow angels that are doing this. I feel so seen and cared for. This is not a service that I would ask for or even that I need. I have never felt more connected to a community. To know that someone's going to go out of their way to do this for me. And to keep on doing it, even if I've dropped hints to them as I'm trying to guess who's done it, that they don't need to do that, it's just, for me, it's been a really kind of humbling lesson about what it means to serve and to be served. And not just to look for those opportunities, but also, the dedication of this angel to continue to serve me even when I'm out there trying to beat them to it,
It's got to be a whole team. Because
you'd have
they've got to have a
think.
shoveler and they've got to have a lookout person.
Right.
I just saw her
Waiting
bedroom
for the
light go on.
light flip on.
Everybody scatter.
Scatter. It's my little angel elves. And again, like you were saying, Lisa, when you're walking around thinking that people are noticing, people know you're there. And any one of these people might be the person that's putting themselves out just a little bit in order to send a signal to me that I'm worth it.
Steve.
I don't know where you're planning on going, but that sort of leads to a story.
Yeah.
That whole idea of community it's more important than we know. We had this incident where we'd been in this neighborhood for probably 15 years. We were in, to use the word magical, kind of a magical cul-de-sac, 10 homes, 28 kids under the age of 18.
And not a flake of snow on any of the driveways.
No snow. Okay. And the kids were in and out of each other's houses. It kind of felt like family. But when it really became apparent to me was we had these two beautiful, beautiful, huge cottonwood trees that I loved. And they were old. And then the windstorm came and one of the branches broke off and just barely missed the corner of my neighbor's house where their bedroom is.
Mm.
And because I do care for my neighbors, I thought it's time. We got one taken down, and that was good. We're saving up a little for the next one, and we got somebody else. We totally got scammed.
Oh,
Somebody
wow.
did show up. We'd paid the first half. They showed up. They trimmed a bunch of the branches, and they felled the tree in such a way it had to fall into the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
And so we told all our neighbors, on this day, we are so sorry, but you have to park somewhere else other than where you live because a giant tree will fill our entire cul-de-sac.
Mm.
And so they brought it down, and then they took a break for lunch, and we never saw them again.
Mm.
And so I had a giant tree filling my entire cul-de-sac. I thought, okay, I better go get a chainsaw. And hope I don't kill myself since I'd never used one before. And
Now's the time to learn.
Now's a good time to learn. So I told my neighbors, I have to go to work, but I'm taking tomorrow off and starting tonight. I'll cut the parts in front of your driveways. We'll make a path. Please don't worry, all of this stuff. I go to work. I was agitated. Somebody had done something wrong, affected me and my neighbors. When I got home, half of it was gone. My neighbors had made a party, and people had brought their grills, and they had set up tables, and they were making pancakes, and then 8 people with chainsaws were sawing, and the young men and young women were loading up one of the 2 great big long trailers, and there was music playing. It was just... They turned it into a party and saved our bacon.
Wow.
Oh.
And I knew I loved these people, but I didn't know how much they loved me. From that moment on, if there was anything that needed doing for anyone, pull shingles off a roof to save money, whatever, I had to be there to do it because they did a thing that was absolutely insurmountable to me. It was huge. And it was an evening's quick work with an army, a well-fed army. So, yeah, that sense of community, it's astounding sometimes.
And you paid it forward by shoveling Julie's driveway. From that time to this.
It was the
My
whole
angel,
cul-de-sac.
my
all
ever
along.
since-
no
ever since
shoveling
then,
elf.
when you're not making Advent pillows.
Right.
Yes. And
so busy.
still today
Yeah.
on snowy night.
I think about one of the things that has impressed me about the stories as we've gone around is that some of them are enormous stories and some of them are tiny little stories, right? And I'm thinking about how small does it have to be before it doesn't matter anymore? And I can't find that place. I can't find that place. I am a stepfather, right? And that's a very interesting relationship. Step parents of the world, I see you. I'm one of you. I married my wife, and my wife is the one I married, right? And her children have no obligation to like or love me, have no obligation to invite me into sort of the father space of their lives. They don't have that obligation, right? We have a great relationship. We have a terrific relationship, and I love my stepkids very much. They love me too. But just a couple of weeks ago, I fell down, which is a different prospect when you're my age than it was such
touch and go.
It was so not a big deal. I just fell down.
But if it's winter and you go on your back, you can do a snow angel
That's
real
right.
quick.
Yeah, there you go.
And I got right back up.
Oh, it wasn't winter.
I got right back up. I just slid. I slid on some gravel, right, and I had fallen down. I got back up. I thought I was fine. That night, I was sure I had broken a rib or something like that. I couldn't even get into bed, and I kind of the rest of the family was going about doing things, and I was lying there in bed completely helpless, having fallen down earlier in the day, and I'm lying there, and into the room walks my stepdaughter, my adult stepdaughter Eden, and she's got a plate with a cup of cocoa on it and a Tim Tam. You know what Tim Tams
Oh,
are?
yes,
Tim Tam
I
cookies,
do.
right? Yeah, yeah. And she comes in and she sets the cocoa down next to me and she sits on the bed next to me. She says, I just need to know that you know how to do a Tim Tam slam. And I said,
salute her.
I kind of started. I started by saying, I think I can probably figure out. And she's like, no. It's a specific thing, and she shows me how to do it. And it has to do with breaking off parts of the cookie and then sucking the hot cocoa up through the cookie.
So that it saturates the cookie.
That's right.
And then letting it melt in the warmth
the cookie
of your
melts in your and there was she doesn't do that kind of thing for people.
Oh.
But she did it for me. And now it's one of my treasures, that my stepdaughter came in on her own steam and brought me a cup of cocoa, wanted to make sure I knew how to do a Tim Tam slam, and said, I'll bring you more Tim Tams if you need more Tim Tams. And again, I just think, how small does a thing have to be before it doesn't matter anymore? I just can't find that. This has been our Christmas conversation. Not all of these stories have been Christmas stories, but in the sense that this kind of service we have come to look on as an act of devotion, that when we think about Christmas time, peace on earth, goodwill toward men, this is what to us goodwill toward men looks like. And it's been such a rich experience for me to hear your stories of times in your life when something, either small or large, that somebody has done for you or for your family has made a difference, that you carry with you now as a memory of an angel. If you're listening, we invite you to visit lighttheworld.org to find out more about how you can be someone's angel this season. Thanks for joining us this year for a BYU Radio Family Christmas. And guys, thanks for joining me here in the studio. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
A little song now. There's a star in the Christmas story, and thoughts of that star turn my eyes and my imagination to the vast sky. And I'm reminded that the story of Christmas is big enough not only to fill my own believing heart, but to fill the universe itself. I don't know anything about what the star that shone at Bethlehem might have been, but here's a song at Christmas time about a few of the closest of our starry neighbors. The song is called Stars. When the yellow sun goes away, Proxima Centauri is the next closest star. And if you wonder just how far, she's 25 trillion miles away. And if the yellow sun were gone, and also Proxima Centauri, then the next closest star would be the one they call the foot of the centaur. And that's the English for the Latinization of the Arabic, Rigel Centaurus. And it's a miracle that the light from just one solitary star could ever get so far as to light my little way. And on I go alone, but for that solitary star, like it's only me and her, and the whole wide universe heading home. Out a little further, there's the great wolf, the red dwarf, and the lion's mouth. 47 trillion miles or so between us, and in the autumn she is in the south, just like the Holy Southern Cross. Look up and you'll see Sirius the dog, and she'll strike you as the very brightest star. For she is young enough An early dinosaur might have looked and seen her forming in the sky. And don't it seem a miracle that the light from just one solitary star could ever get so far as to light my little way? And on I go alone, but for that solitary star, like it's only me and her, and the whole wide universe heading home. Me and her, and the whole wide universe heading home. Heading home. I'm Sam Payne. More Christmas with BYU Radio coming up. I want to introduce you to another show from the BYU Radio family of podcasts. It's called The Lisa Show, and it's hosted by comedian, believer, actress, single mother Lisa Valentine Clark. The Lisa Show delves into the multitude of challenges and relationships that shape our lives, whether it's parenting, mental health questions, social issues. She and her council of moms will tackle it. She'll help you figure out this thing called life with a lot of laughs along the way. Lisa is a great person to hang around with. The Lisa Show, listen wherever you get your podcasts. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all kinds of places to listen to The Lisa Show whenever you like. The Lisa Show from BYU Radio. It's great to have you with us for a BYU Radio Family Christmas. If you listen to the Lisa Show podcast, you may be familiar with the Council of Moms, where Lisa gathers a few thoughtful, smart parents to discuss parent stuff. And in a special Christmas time take on the Council of Moms, Lisa gathered a few friends who really love to be secret elves this time of year. And these folks shared a few terrific stories about anonymous giving during the holidays. Problem is, how do you share stories of anonymous Christmas giving in a show like this where a lot of people can hear it while somehow maintaining the anonymity of the secret givers? Well, we think we've found a way. Don't adjust your dial. Here's Lisa with a take on the Council of Moms that we're calling the Council of Elves.
Welcome to a special edition of the Council of Moms. It's actually the Council of Elves. Today we're talking about how we can show up for each other, not only as moms, but also as secret, anonymous helper elves. And so who better to ask than the elves themselves? Today
I'm Peppermint Sparkles. I'm Sugar Plum. And I'm hot chocolate.
Oh, man. It's the best of the Council of Elves. The Council of Elves, spreading Christmas cheer wherever we go. It's stormy and snowy outside, but it's warm here in our hearts. See? I knew it was going to happen. Okay, so let's get started. You know, a lot of times we come together as the Council of Moms to share ideas. We come from different backgrounds, different experiences. With the Council of Elves, it's no different. It's just more special because we're looking for that unique experience to really amp up our giving spirit at this time of the year. So, elves, how do you give anonymous service in a way that's not only meaningful, but that it stays anonymous?
Well, I can tell you a story. When I was just a new mom, and I decided, the one thing that I really want to do is I want to do this Secret Elves thing. Because one time as a kid, we did it. And I had so much fun with my sisters doing it. And I thought, this will make Christmas feel like Christmas. So we were living in the basement apartment of an older couple. And I would go up during nap time and take care of them in exchange for rent and everything. And we thought that they would be fantastic recipients for our Secret Elf service. So we got a 12-piece nativity set and wrapped them all individually. And then we would sneak out the back and walk around to the front and ring the doorbell and leave the little thing and then run back around. But it was incredible because I actually got an inside track for what they were experiencing as these presents came. And the first present that we left was the donkey for the nativity set. And way to start with a bang, right? I was like, it'll be fine. It'll be great.
Clearly you need to start with the donkey.
Exactly. So the next day, I run up to, take care of them and everything. And the man grabbed me. And he took me over with his cane to the table. And there was the donkey. And he took his cane and he pointed at it. And he was like, "What is this?" "What is this?" And I was like, "A donkey?" "Exactly. Why was it on my doorstep?" Maybe someone was giving you a present?" "No, someone knows I'm a Democrat." So I decided that perhaps the next day I should wrap up a wise man.
Yeah.
So that I could let him know that it wasn't some kind of political
Statement.
Yeah. So they started anticipating our nightly visits. And since they didn't have a lot of other things to do, he literally waited by the door.
Oh, and this is what people do. They want to know.
Yep. So my husband's up there. I'm holding the two babies around the side of the house. My husband knocks on the door, and he opens it just not even seconds later. And my husband takes a flying leap into the bushes and remains hidden. But he was in the perfect position to watch as this man took his cane and steadied himself and picked up the little present. And then he went to the edge of the steps. And then he called out into the night, "Thank you. Oh. Thank you, whoever you are."
Oh, wow.
Right?
And then your husband's crying in the bushes.
Yeah. Which is how I like to spend the holidays.
It took all the way up until the end for him to realize that this was perhaps a nativity set. But we decided that we would bring the baby Jesus on December 25th in person. And they had no idea that it was us. And they just melted. It was so fun to see them so excited and to realize that it was us. We think it's really fun to reveal ourselves at the end. Some great friendships have formed and some just really happy feelings because they're guessing the whole time, right? And we love at the end to be like, "Hey, we love you."
Okay, so how else can we find this Christmas spirit by giving anonymously?
So one thing that my little elves decided that we could do without a ton of money is they each picked someone in their school class that they thought could use some Christmas cheer. And the thing that they did is that they would pay attention to them that day, and then they would come home and write a little note to them. And they would say, "I noticed today that you were really good at following instructions when the teacher asked you to do this. And I just think that's really great." And then they would sign it, "Love, Santa's Elves." They would then take the letter the next day to the front office. And then the front office would call the student up to the front office, and they were totally in on it. And they were like, "Someone from the North Pole delivered this here for you."
Oh, wow.
And they would get this little note, and then they would read it, and they're like, "They can see me." And,
Yeah. That's so fun.
But my kids would continue to do that, and we did it, I don't know, for a couple weeks. And so it was maybe a total of 5 to 6 little letters that they would get. And then at the end, I believe they got like a candy cane or something in the letter to just say, "I'm so excited for your Christmas. You're such a great kid." But it was a really great opportunity for little elves who are pretty self-absorbed to start looking elsewhere, and it didn't cost any money. And I think it was one of the most magical things that we've ever really been able to do for Christmas.
I love that.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. I think this idea of anonymous that adds an element of magic that sometimes we lose, especially for moms over the holidays. Right.
Yeah.
In the doing, you realize that you don't want to lose that magic of the joy of giving, and giving anonymous can kind of help that.
And as female elves, I think the thing we do that just submarines us is we overthink.
Yeah.
Too many expectations. And I love that the anonymous aspect just takes it off the table.
Yeah, it's so true.
I'm also wondering, too, if you could just be anonymous, like in the literal sense. If you have a gift or something, you observe somebody and you just give it to them and you say, somebody wanted me to give this to you. And it was you, but you don't know the person. That is the ultimate anonymous act.
And it
It
totally
throws them
works.
off. It wasn't like,
totally
I
works.
noticed that you were struggling and that you could use this box of Pampers.
Well,
No, it's just somebody told me to give this to you.
Yeah.
It was just the voices inside my head and none of your business.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's struggling. Everyone can use, a feeling of love at Christmas time. Everyone. And so, there doesn't have to be this thing, this stigma
Reason.
of like, oh, they've had a rough year.
Right.
We better do something nice for them. No. It can just be like, you know what? Who wouldn't love a surprise showing up to their doorstep every day? And to that end, if you're a praying person, praying about the people is a great idea. We do that every year. And sometimes people will pop into our heads that we're like, oh, okay. But you never know.
Yeah.
You never know what's going on underneath the smile that you see. You never know.
Thank you for a wonderful council of elves. This has been so fun. Any final words?
I just love how anonymous giving, it is the opposite of everything else that is so stressful about the holidays. All the comparison and commercialism and anonymous giving, it's such a break from the Instagram aspect of Christmas, because you will never know what those private reactions really are, the likes, the loves. You won't get to observe it personally, and so you're already detached from it. You don't have to worry what other people will think because it's not attached to you at all. It's such an opportunity to feel this pure joy of Christmas giving that is getting rarer and harder to find.
Thank you for a wonderful council of elves. This has been so fun.
Thanks to Lisa and to the secret Christmas givers in her Council of Elves. We hope we've maintained their anonymity. And thank you for joining us for a BYU Radio Family Christmas. As we near the end of our hour together, we have a tradition. We like to spend a moment each year reading together the Christmas story from Luke chapter 2 in the Bible. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed.
And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria.
And all went to be taxed, every one into his own city.
And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David.
To be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child.
And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered.
And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn.
And there were in the same country shepherds, abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night.
And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid.
And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people.
For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord.
And this shall be a sign unto you, ye shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger.
And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying,
Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men.
And it came to pass, as the angels were gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, Let us now go even unto Bethlehem, and see this thing which is come to pass, which the Lord hath made known unto us.
And they came with haste, and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger.
And when they had seen it, they made known abroad the saying which was told them concerning the child.
And all they that heard it wondered at those things which were told them by the shepherds.
But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart.
Right about here, in each edition of a BYU Radio Family Christmas, we have another tradition, the singing of Silent Night. And we love to sing together, the five of us around these microphones. But this year we thought we'd open the doors of the studio to gather as much of the BYU Radio family as we could. Not just the hosts, but producers, sound designers, engineers, board ops, folks from the distribution office, the whole gang, whether you even thought of yourself as a singer or not. We loved singing together. Feel free to sing along. It's a good bet you know this one. Thanks to the whole BYU Radio family for joining us in song. And thanks to you, too, for joining us. Visit lighttheworld.org for more information on how you can be someone's angel this Christmas. A BYU Radio Family Christmas is a production of BYU Radio. You can find all of the podcasts hosted by the folks involved in this hour, Lisa and Julie and Steve and Marcus and me and more, at BYUradio.org or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Sam Payne. Merry Christmas.